Way to go, Tic Tac!
That's how you punch.
Wakanda forever!
You wouldn't have heard of me.
Let me put you on hold.
Dance off, bro! He's a friend from work!
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going over and ranking The World's End. The World's End, released in 2013, written and directed by Edgar Wright. 5 friends who reunite in an attempt to top their epic pub crawl from 20 years earlier unwittingly become humanity's only hope for survival. So this movie was requested to me by Now This Is Epic 1919, and if you want to see me review a specific movie, just comment it down below and I'll add it to my list. When it comes to this movie though, it threw me for a massive loop. I went into it without looking at the summary, without seeing a trailer, without seeing anything, which definitely hurt the movie for me because I was thrown for a massive loop when it came to the saving of humanity part. And I just think that it should have stuck with the friends reuniting after 20 years part. But that's for me to talk about in the plot. Let's just get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. So the plot of this movie is quite confusing because when it starts, it just shows you the background of all the characters when they were younger doing this pub crawl originally. And then it fast forwards 20 years for you to see them try to get reunited and do it again later. And that part I actually liked. I liked the character development they showed, seeing how their lives have changed from when they were high schoolers until now when they're married with kids, completely different lives other than the main character, obviously Gary King. But I liked that part. I love movies that have friends reuniting after a long time, getting into the same exact situations that they were when they were kids. I've seen plenty of movies like that. All of them are really good and I love seeing those. So I was happy when I was thinking that that's going to be the entire story. It was engaging. I enjoyed it. I liked the characters. I wanted to see more. And then they just threw this bombshell of them trying to save humanity. Now, this whole section with the robots and taking over everything, literally the end of the world, the world's end, which the title makes more sense now, but I just think that part was all unnecessary. If they made this just a classic comedy with friends being together, reunited after 20 years, and just seeing that, only that, I think it'd be a much better movie. I think they made it way too confusing, especially since it's unexpected and not really what you're looking for when it came to a movie like this, when it started at least. So the plot needs work. Now, maybe if they cleaned it up and made it more obvious of what was going on from the start, then I'd feel differently, but the way that they set it up now, it made it too confusing. The second essential aspect is attraction. So even though that this plot was very confusing, I found a few points still in this movie that I did find attractive, I did enjoy, I thought it was entertaining. Now, the comedy is there. I think the characters have great chemistry. They were all actually funny. And when it came to the start and the end of the movie were the most satisfying parts for me. Those are the parts I most enjoyed. In the middle part, it just pulled me out too much to really sit down and enjoy it as much. So I loved the aftermath of the entire movie and the beforehand of it all. But that middle part, again, it's not attractive because it's like a word sandwich. You just have no idea what's going on for some points, and that definitely hurt it. The third essential aspect is theme. The basic message that I feel like the directors and the writers were trying to put onto the audience is really just, you don't always want to live in the past. Now, Gary King had this problem where he just always wanted to relive his younger years. He didn't care for his life currently, so he just wanted to go back in time and really relive that. So he tried to recreate everything that he could. And that doesn't always work. There were some situations in this movie where that was necessary. It was necessary to kind of relive the past and do all these stuff, and it made sense. But for the most part, it doesn't always work. So I think that's just the main message they're trying to come across, where it's not, you can't put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to that kind of message. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. Now, I actually did think the dialogue in this movie was good. They had good conversations. They felt real. There was no awkward, not realistic conversations being had in this movie, for the most part. When it came to the androids talking, that sometimes didn't feel as real, but that's because they're robots. They're not supposed to have realistic speech. So overall, I didn't really see any discrepancies when it came to the dialogue, which is a very good thing and definitely did surprise me. The fifth essential aspect is acting. So the acting was all decent in this. There wasn't any spectacular out of this world acting, but there also wasn't any duds, really. Maybe a little bit, but not to the point where it's even worth mentioning. And again, like in this entire trilogy that I just reviewed, Simon Pegg, who played Gary King in this, was the main character, and without him the movie wouldn't be as good. He did kind of put the whole group together when it came to how the acting was and the characters that we all love when watching this movie. And Nick Frost, who played Andy Knightley, which is his best friend in this movie and in every movie that they are in this trilogy. And that dynamic duo really is the heart and soul of this movie. Without them, or if they were replaced with different actors, it's most of the time it would end up being worse. And that includes The World's End. So I think the acting overall in this movie, probably the best out of the three, because it's all neutral. In other movies there were some worse scenes, but there also were some better scenes. So overall, this movie did fine with acting, but again, those two are definitely the stars and the ones that are worth mentioning. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. So when it came to the visuals of this movie, I have to say it looked okay. It looked fine. There wasn't anything crazy, but the androids definitely could use work. Now, it's not to the point where I can't look over it. I looked past it. It was fine, but they really were just Lego pieces, Barbie doll kind of pop-off arms when it came to like the androids being destroyed. And I was expecting a little more detail, but it's something I can easily look past. But when it came to the emotions, I think they did a good job of, with the character development, getting you invested in all these characters, all of the people in this friend group. You wanted the best for them. You didn't really want to see them fail. So whenever anything happened, you definitely felt it somewhat emotionally. Not to the level that you can, but it's definitely up there. So when it came to both parts of cinematography, they didn't really fail in much, but they only really exceeded in emotions. The seventh essential aspect is editing. Now, besides the beginning and the end, it's an editing mess. I mean, the pacing is really off. You just don't really know what's happening all the time. And that is because of the confusing plot. It's not all on the editing, but it definitely could have been enhanced if the pacing was a little bit better. But I do have to say the way that they showed the beginning part, the intro, kind of giving background information for all the characters in a very sweet, short and sweet kind of pace, definitely did good thing for the movie because it kept it shorter with still giving you all that background knowledge to get these characters rolling. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. There definitely was a soundtrack, but it's also definitely not memorable because I don't remember any of it. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So I believe it's the director's job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And the director of this movie is Edgar Wright, and he's previously directed 4 movies. And they were A Fistful of Fingers, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And obviously, I have seen Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. They are the previous 2 movies in this trilogy, and I just reviewed them. They're my previous 2 reviews. But when it came to the other 2, I didn't see them, so I can't really judge them off of that. But based off of the previous 2 movies, it makes sense why he is the director, because he works with Simon Pegg. He has all the same actors in all 3 movies because they have good chemistry. They know how to work well together to make the movie as good as it can be. And he definitely is the good choice for the director because of that. I just feel like this movie was definitely a big letdown compared to Hot Fuzz. Shaun of the Dead started okay. Hot Fuzz got me excited for this 3rd movie because it actually did much better. I actually enjoyed it a lot more. But then this one kind of tanked it a little bit. I feel like it wasn't as much work put into this plot, making it as interesting as it can be. Now, I know all of these movies are parodies and they are more for entertainment and comedy and they're not supposed to be serious, but I expected some sort of seriousness when it came to the plot, not just kind of throwing things at a canvas and expecting it to work. So that's really one iffy part I had about this, but overall, he was definitely the right choice for director. And the 10th essential aspect is time. Now, personally, I wouldn't say this stands the test of time, but people seem to like this trilogy. It seems to have stood the time so far. I mean, this movie is 12 years old, so it does got a decade on it. So it definitely stood up to this point. Me personally, I don't know why it has. It's not really good. The trilogy part has to be the thing carrying this movie because otherwise I wouldn't really know of this movie or plan to watch it ever. But I guess it stood the test of time, but I still am confused why. Now, onto the reviews. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics give it an 89%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 72%, and IMDb gave it a 69%. Now, this makes more sense, because the other 2 movies were in the 90s for at least 2 of the categories, which were very confusing to me, because they definitely weren't up there. This one makes more sense why it's lower, but 89 is way too high. I also want to say 72 is too high. I think this movie belongs in the 60 to 65 range. It has some elements that are good. It has the character development. It has the decent acting, but that plot really tanks it for me. I feel like a movie has to have a good plot if it's planning on it. Like, this is obviously a comedy, so the plot, it doesn't have to be as good as a really good cinematic movie, but it has to have something there so it's not just jokes put on the screen and that's really all it is. Because at that point, it's just a stand-up comedy show. So I feel like this movie lacking in plot is the real reason why it's so low for me. Otherwise, it could have been definitely way higher. So I think 60, 65 is a pretty good range. And finally, the rankings. So in 2013, it's going to be second, above Fateful Findings and below The Wolverine. Now, I don't really think I have to discuss why it's above Fateful Findings. I wouldn't even allow Fateful Findings to be called a movie if it was up to me, but it is. So that movie didn't have good acting, plot, anything, cinematography, nothing. It was just a long YouTube video, basically. And The Wolverine is clearly better than The World's End because it just has more to give. It has more character development. It has a plot that's more interesting. It has great cinematography, and it's just, in general, a better movie. Now, don't get me wrong, that movie has its issues. It has problems that I personally have with it. It's just not the perfect movie, but neither is The World's End. In the 2010s, it's going to be 20th, above Dark Phoenix, and again, below The Wolverine. Now, I'm not going to describe why it's below The Wolverine, because I just did. But it's above Dark Phoenix simply because both movies have its problems. I just feel like the acting is better in The World's End. I feel like it just gets more to the point. And the plot, although it definitely was confusing, I feel like it was slightly put together better than Dark Phoenix. I feel like Dark Phoenix just has too many discrepancies for me to really give it that credit. And I do have to say the dialogue in The World's End is really what carried it for me. The conversations between the characters felt real, and they really made me make this decision to put it above it. So those are the main reasons. And in all time, it's 51st, above Kraven the Hunter, and again, below The Wolverine. Now, again, I'm not going to describe why it's below The Wolverine, because I just did. But it's above Kraven the Hunter simply because both plots had serious issues. Now, it was confusion for The World's End, but for Kraven, it was kind of confusion as well, because a lot of the stuff just didn't make sense. It didn't feel like Kraven. It didn't feel as good as it could have. And the acting, there were some good parts, there were some bad parts, but there weren't any really bad acting parts when it came to The World's End. So that's another thing, and I just feel like it's the better movie. It has the comedy, it has what it needs to. Kraven just had so much potential and it failed. So did The World's End, but it didn't fail as hard. That's all I have for The World's End. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment what movie you want me to review next. Let me know what you thought of this movie or any of the movies in this trilogy. I'm very curious. This is personally the first time that I've watched any of these movies, so it was interesting seeing them for the first time. For example, for a commenter, now this is Epic 1919, who's seen it probably plenty of times and wanted me to see it himself. So he always comments on these videos trying to give me a second look at how someone that has watched these previously thinks of them. So if you have any thoughts on it, definitely let me know in the comments. And if you want to see someone that does the same style of movie reviewing that I do, with the tendential aspects, the rankings, the reviews, and he has the same ongoing list in the decades and in all time, then definitely go check him out. His name is Mr. Majoritarian. He is my best friend, and he is the one that got me into movie reviewing in general. So if you want to see someone with a slightly different opinion, definitely go check him out. And I hope you guys have an amazing night. Peace out.